Thank you. Good evening. Yes, when Rachel first brought the Mila information to me, I was very interested in it because of the research I started, delving into more on the need for not only fish oil products, but also plant-based forms of omega-3 fatty acids for children's health. I also liked that it was an organic whole food. It had phytonutrients in it because we all know kids will not eat their vegetables and get very little in the way of organic whole food sources. I like that it had the fiber in it. I like that it was going to help with their constipation because that's such a chronic problem that we deal with in pediatrics. And I like that it was going to help take down the cholesterol. So I was interested in that for my own family's use as well as seeing how well it would work for children.
I think we did a really good job with it. We are planning to get it published. The write-up is taking some time, and then once we get it submitted, the publishing is probably going to take some time. So we put this together for you because we know that there's a lot of people with a lot of questions out there. We put this together for you so you don't have to wait a couple of years for the publishing of that study so that you can really have some good documentation to share with the people that you love and care about. And Dr. Worthington and I are going to be commenting on the slides. It's really, for those of you that have medical minds, you'll probably really like it. For those of you that don't have medical minds, I think it's going to definitely validate for you what we have. So it's been very well documented in the literature that omega-3 deficiency is correlated with mental health and behavioral problems, and that there's a lot of evidence for impaired functioning of the central nervous system when there's a low intake or dietary absence of omega-3s. And I'll let Dr. Worthington comment on what types of things we see as a result of that.
Okay, well, it is, again, very well documented in the literature that the DHA is essential for brain development and visual development. The developing brain is going to just be taking all the DHA that it can from the mom, particularly during that last trimester of pregnancy. So it's so important for mothers to be well nourished with DHA, to feed and develop that growing brain and visual development. It's also essential for our cardiovascular health. It's essential for nerve signals, for one nerve to send a message to the other nerve, and for that message to be received and transmitted. It is essential that the cell membrane is very fluid and very movable and not stiff. And for that to be accomplished, it requires a very nice, healthy dose of omega-3 oils. Our psychomotor development is very well documented that children need omega-3s in the form of DHA and EPA for that. Optimal functioning of adrenal glands, optimal functioning of testicular health, optimal mood. Much postpartum depression may indeed be related to low omega-3s in mothers, and it possibly reduces the risk of some neurologic diseases as well. Alpha-linolenic acid is the parent compound or the mother compound that goes through several enzymatic steps to become EPA and then a few more steps to become DHA. Omega-3 fish oil is preformed. The DHA is right there, no enzyme steps needed. And so that is why it's been the preferred form, particularly for infants with brain development, retinal development. They're not going to have that full complement of enzymes to get to DHA. But as we get past that infancy period, again, the controversy has been how well can this ALA be converted to DHA. And the literature tends to support that this conversion isn't very good. But as Rachel pointed out, the studies also tend to not be very good that draw these conclusions.
So we did draw the children's red blood cell essential fatty acid profiles prior to the study, prior to starting them on Mila, and then after 3 months of consuming the Mila. And I will tell you there were a number of children in our study that were already consuming fish oil. And so we made notes about that as we went along as to which ones were and which ones weren't.
Yeah, I was very, very surprised with the results that we had At the beginning of the study, the children had their blood drawn, and we looked at their red blood cell essential fatty acid profile. And the children on fish oils had measurable amounts of EPA. They had good amounts of DHA. But once we added the Mila, and the children on fish oil stayed on their fish oil, we didn't change any other parameter but add the Mila, without exception, the children's levels of EPA rose significantly. And the children who were not on fish oil all had incredible improvements in their EPA and DHA levels, which we would have expected consuming the Mila. They kind of went from 0 to 60 on their blood work, a huge improvements. But even on children with the fish oil, the EPA levels all showed significant improvements.
We did give each of the children 1 to 2 tablespoons of Mila per day. We started out, some of the children actually started way low at 1 teaspoon, and by the end we had almost all of them consuming, aiming for 2 tablespoons a day, but getting at least 1 tablespoon of Mila in per day.
As I had stated prior, increasing the ALA by supplementing the children with Mila increased the EPA in the children, even if they were already on fish oil. The other thing that was interesting was that we saw that children could synthesize DHA, and the majority of them, not all, but the majority of the children were able to increase the amount of DHA as measured on their red blood cell, even though they were not on fish oil. So that was kind of the big surprise, and that was nice to see. The other thing that we didn't even start out looking at was looking at the cardiac risk factors for children. And what was a little bit scary was that the cardiac risk factors, which is a calculation, you take the arachidonic acid, which is the kind of bad inflammatory compound that is made from the omega-6s, and you divide it by the EPA. The initial omega-3 indexes on children, which is a number that gives you an idea of their risk for cardiovascular disease, was actually pretty poor in most of the kids. If it's anywhere from 0 to 4, these children are at high risk, potentially high risk for cardiovascular health. We know that fatty streaks in the aorta actually start in childhood, and then by the time we're hitting our 40s and 50s, those fatty streaks can really have become quite large, and then have hypertension, stroke, and heart attack. But the laying down of those fatty streaks actually starts in childhood, and most of these children had a pretty poor omega-3 index because the EPA rose so significantly, and the omega-3 index is the arachidonic acid divided by the EPA. So we get that EPA level up, and it brings the omega-3 index way down. One child, I'm just going to find the number here. Actually, it was 2 children. They were siblings who had not been on any fish oil before, had an omega-3 index of 2.5 and 3.4. So below 4. After 3 months, their cardiovascular index was 10.4, and the others was 9.6. So it puts them now from a high risk up to basically no risk for cardiovascular risk. And that's just one example of 2 siblings. If they were not on a fish oil at the beginning of the study, the kind of the numbers, the change was kind of much more dramatic. But again, even the kids on fish oil showed improvement in their omega-3 index. I'd mentioned at the beginning about constipation. That is such an incredibly common problem now in pediatrics. And when we're treating constipation in the children, a lot of times we find someone else in the family, parents have irritable bowel. And when parents start taking their children's Mila, when I prescribed it for the children, I get really good feedback that the parents' irritable bowel issues have also resolved. And in this study, any child that started with constipation had resolution of those symptoms. And we not only went just by history of their stools, they had pictures of stools. They had calendars of how to keep their stools. There were ratings of their stools. So with even looking at constipation, we had very standard measures that are accepted in the literature of how to monitor something as basic as constipation. With ADHD, we use the Vanderbilt scales. Every scale that we use for parents to fill out during the study are very standard measures that are accepted in the literature, and we found improvement across the board on these children.
We'll just kind of go through these quickly, and we are going to go through some specific cases here in just a moment. Being in dermatology, I had no idea that insomnia and sleep issues were so widespread in America, as much in the adults as it seems to be in the children. And I'd heard so many testimonies about Mila with the sleep that this wasn't really a surprise to me, but it was really a surprise to the parents. We had one child, you hear talking about sensory issues, those of you who work with children who have things like autism, obsessive compulsive disorder, Asperger's, there's sensory issues, and so we had one child who didn't have as many of those sensory issues as we went through the study, and again, the parent was very impressed and surprised by that. We saw really big changes in the Vanderbilt scores. This was, again, the rating scale for the patients who had ADHD, the children who'd been diagnosed with ADHD, and Dr. Worthington can explain the Vanderbilt score a little bit. It's a score that people get, and when parents fill out the survey form, depending on your score, will depend on whether or not you get the diagnosis of ADHD. And there were many children who, based on the Vanderbilt, had the score of ADHD going into the study, but when we finished it, they no longer had that score. So they couldn't be labeled ADHD anymore after eating the Mila for 90 days, which is very cool.
3 of the children, there were very, very significant changes in their Vanderbilt score, where they were going from 3s down to 1s and even 0s on things that had prior been rated as 2s and 3s. We had one mom even write a very nice letter that just the overall mood, that she finally got to see who her child really was, that there was this sense of humor, a child who was more laid back, and that she could really meet kind of the real true child versus this constant struggle and fatigue of parenting such a strong, busy fellow. And to finally get compliments about their child was so nice to hear, versus always feeling on pins and needles being out in public with the child. Just simple things like going out to eat and getting a haircut were no longer exhausting struggles. So those were some pretty profound examples of just such a nice improvement in quality of life.
A couple of the autistic children had brothers, had siblings, so they saw increased communication not only from the child to the parent, but also the sibling interaction was greatly increased. And for those of you that know children who have autism or have children with autism, you know that often they live in their own little world. And so to see that person kind of come out of their shell is really nice. We had one child in the study who was obsessed with ceiling fans. I went to their house. I don't think Dr. Worthington's ever been to their house. They live in Jacksonville. And he literally had made ceiling fan pictures. He had those little, I don't remember what they're called, but Legos and Pogo things with literally ceiling fans were all over the house. He had downloaded YouTube videos to watch ceiling fans on YouTube. When we were done, no more ceiling fans. She was so impressed. She couldn't believe that had stopped. So also increasing in the motor skills. The handwriting was something that I believe I remember Dr. Worthington talking about, that we noticed in a lot of the children, which was really nice.
We started off at the beginning, they would fill out an ATEC, and then as we went through the 3 months, we could see the scores get lower and lower as the children had less and less kind of abnormal or concerning behaviors. I think the thing that, when I looked at why were these scores getting better, the profile that changed the most, that brought the scores down, was anxiety. The children's anxiety seemed to be the major thing that improved, and the notice that the increased social interaction and play. There were two different families that really noticed that, and again, these were with children who had siblings. So to all of a sudden have the child who was diagnosed with autism initiate play, to want to play, to want to interact with their sibling was really big. Yeah, as I had mentioned at the beginning, DHA, which is preformed in an omega-3 fish oil product, is essential for the development of the brain and the retina, adrenal health, testicle health. So that is responsible for structure. The EPA is responsible for function. And so, again, when we got these results, I had to figure out why we were seeing these big effects. And the more I looked into the results of the EPA, that's where you're seeing changes in anxiety, the mood, the attention, the kind of just the chronic stress that we see these little ones functioning under. The EPA is responsible for the anti-inflammatory effect that we see in the nervous system, and also for the anti-inflammatory effect that we see system-wide. It's been shown that that improves blood flow to the brain, and we also know that the EPA helps to increase the serotonin levels, and serotonin is the neurotransmitter to be happy, to not be anxious. I had mentioned before, getting the EPA up is what is going to improve that cardiovascular index and improve circulation in general in the body.
Okay, so I want you to see up here at the top where it says negative FO. That means these people, the children, were not on fish oil prior to the study, and then when you see a positive fish oil, it means they were on fish oil prior to the study. And this is just to kind of give you a breakdown to show you it's not just one or two. It's literally across the board that we saw some really big changes in. You can see his anxiety levels decreased, his EPA levels increased by 560%, his DHA levels increased by 137%. I believe this is one of the children that she was talking about whose cardiovascular risk decreased by 40%. I have to tell you, she mentioned this briefly earlier, but I was shocked when I saw the blood results and the high cardiovascular risk in these children who were already consuming fish oil. This was, again, just one example. This was a female, allergy improvement, constipation resolution, somebody who was on fish oil, but still we saw the EPA and the DHA levels going up. This was the brother of that previous one, positive fish oil again, resolution of allergic rhinitis, constipation again, EPA and DHA levels improving. This next one again on fish oil pills, you can see again the EPA and the DHA levels improved as well as his cardiac index. This one was not on fish oil before. Major changes in the anxiety levels pretty much right off the bat with this little guy, and significant improvement in his Vanderbilt scores, or again that's the ADHD scores as we were going through. Again, EPA and DHA levels both increased. Another child that was on fish oil pills and again saw an obsessive compulsive disorder, that's OCD, the anxiety scores changing, separation anxiety scores changing, EPA and DHA. Are you guys seeing the constipation? I mean, really, constipation was so rampant. I can tell you in dermatology, over 75% of the patients that I see have bowel issues, and it's really an issue in pediatrics. And our children are battling this so much. Another child that was not on fish oil prior to, look at the increases, you guys, in the EPA and the DHA levels. And then the, again, cardiovascular risk greatly improved, which is really phenomenal. This was an autistic child. We talked about this, the handwriting, the socialization. I put the slides together so you could specifically see the percentages and the amounts
Okay, we had impressive results that were very real, that Mila is a safe and effective organic raw whole food for children. It supplied adequate omega-3s in the form of ALA to subsequently provide significant measurable levels in the EPA levels. And in our small study, it was noted that the ALA was converted to DHA in many of our patients. The older they were, the better the conversion was.